Happy Saturday, everybody. Welcome to this Small Business Saturday version of the Furthermore podcast. And I am so excited for this next guest. She is someone who I've known about for a while, basically since the first season of the competition show that she won. She is Whitney Miller, and she is the OG, the original winner, the original master chef. And she's going to be with us in just a few moments on the other side of this break. Welcome back, everybody, to another Small Business Saturday version of the Furthermore podcast. As most of you know, we have our Monday, Wednesday, Friday audio version. We pretty much stick to politics during that podcast, but on the weekends, we like to go a little loosey-goosey. And as you all know, I just love supporting small businesses. I love providing a megaphone for Main Street America, businesses that are really the lifeblood of their communities. It's places where people congregate, where they get to know their neighbors, where they catch up on life, where they support a business. And it's one of the best Americana things that I can think of, which is why I do this series. All right, let's dive into my guest for today. I am so excited because it involves food. And listen, there are people out there who live to eat, meaning it's very utilitarian for them. They just eat so that they can have sustenance, so that they can have the caloric energy to get through their day. That's not me. I live to eat. I don't eat to live. I live to eat. So I am very excited to bring in my guest today. She is Whitney Miller. She is the original Master Chef. Of course, that is Fox TV's series. I think that was probably one of the original cooking shows, reality competition shows that was out there. And she was the original at just 22 years old. She won season one. Whitney Miller, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to talk all things food because, yes, I am definitely in that category where I have mood swings if I have a bad meal. Like it's bad. But it's like, this is just ridiculous.
I know, and people joke about being hangry, and I'm like, yes, I get it, but also for me, it's hangry not only because I don't have the food, it's hangry because I want really, really good food. And here in Washington, there are a lot of great restaurants around here. My husband and I went to a few great ones last week, and I just love food. It's one of the things that drives my day. I have a food centric mentality. Even when I'm here at work, I'm thinking about and I hope my boss isn't listening. I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch. I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner. So you are the perfect person to have on here. Okay, so at age 22, you become the very first master chef. Talk to us about what led up to that. What's your background? How did you start cooking? How did you end up there?
So I started in the kitchen at a very young age. And I think that's kind of something in the South that like you grow up cooking with your grandmother and your mom. Now I gravitated towards the kitchen more than I have two sisters, and they were only in there if they had to. And so I just had that natural, just like drive. Like I wanted to be in the kitchen, I wanted to be cooking. But then I saw something special in my great grandmother that made it have a bit more impact on my life. So she was so much about hospitality. And I could see the love that she put into her food. And then I saw what it made people feel like. So watching their faces, like that was something, even at a young age, I just remember looking around the table and she would have, gumbo, or she would have a roast, or a big like shrimp boil. And I would watch their faces. And it was just like, they would light up in their eyes. And then there's like this, smile would spread across their face. And I thought I wanted to do that. And that really has stuck with me since that young age. And that's still something that I do and I think about now when I make cookies, for my cookie business, is that I wanted to make people happy through food. And so food memories and just everything like that, like everything that I thought of as a child that still resonates in me today. And so I decided at 12 years old, I wanted to be a pastry chef. I just
I
loved
love it.
anything, and that's really where that beginning became, that I wanted to do this more than just for fun but as a career.
What drew you to the pastry side of things? Because, you've got your savory side of stuff, the things that you eat for the main meal, and then you have the desserts, which I'm quite dessert centric. I think that life is uncertain and you should eat dessert first. What drew you to that specifically? Was it the
I
baking
think it was
aspect?
sweet tooth as well. And so I thought, well, if I'm gonna make it, then I love to eat it. And so that was, one thing. But I loved the presentation, I think, too, of desserts. At 12 years old, I was making homemade creme brulee, and I had a little blowtorch, and I was making all the finesse of the pastry side of it. And I think that was really fun. Also, you could kind of, in a way, take your time a little bit more with desserts. And as I grew in that love for pastry, when I went on to MasterChef, that was something that really made me stand out. And I think it was because of those years of me perfecting it, even at just 12 years old.
Yeah, and the presentation thing I think is pretty central to food in general, but I think in the South there's just something extra to it. I grew up, I was actually born in Nashville, but I grew up in Alabama. And anytime you go to something, I mean, for my mom, anytime she cooked, and it didn't matter if it was just a dinner for the family or if it was a dinner for, all of our extended family, there was always a presentation aspect to it. Do you find that and I know you have relationships with a lot of chefs across the country. Do you find that that's something that is innately Southern? It's not exclusively Southern, but do you find that it's innately Southern?
I think it is. I think it's that extra bit of care, that
Mhm.
that love that's put into it. And I think it just resonates. Like, you can just tell when someone, either that has no kind of culinary background to a chef, like, it's just something that they grew up with, and it's just innately in them to just do a little bit extra.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you about your experience with Gordon Ramsay, and I will give a quick little tip to my audience. There are two Gordon Ramsay videos that I watch and follow, and it's for two very basic things: his scrambled egg recipe, where he uses creme fraiche, and it will audience, it will absolutely change your life when it comes to scrambled eggs. And then, of course, his steak that he does in a cast iron skillet, and he does the crushed rosemary and garlic, and he pours it over the top. Those are my two recipes that I know of his. What was he like? What was he like to work with?
I tell people, in the kitchen and on camera, you see the side of him that you see, that you think. I mean, he demands perfection. He's tough. I remember when I first met him, I thought, okay, not only did I just see this kind of idea of him in my head, but he has a tall stature, and he is like ripped. I mean, so it was like, just being in front of him, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And so that already is a little bit intimidating, especially, I was 22 years old at the time. But also, like, it made me want to be better, that he demanded so much from us, that he
Hmm.
wanted us to do well. And so he saw in me, I think, that natural, like, drive to want to learn, to want to grow. And I feel like, kind of took me under his wing, and just like, throughout the whole time. I mean, like, it wasn't easy, but he was like guiding me in a really just, I don't know. I mean, like, he said something in the very beginning, like, I can see, like, my children in you, like my daughter in you.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that was a really just sweet, kind of touching moment. But I mean, he's tough. He has a really funny personality, though, outside of the kitchen.
Oh, really?
Sometimes he that, but sometimes they not. Yeah, he would liven the mood a little bit when we were not filming.
I love that. That's really nice to hear because so often with such high demand environments with high demand leaders like Gordon Ramsay, it's kind of hard to see any type of side that is anything other than extremely, extremely serious. So I love hearing that. I want to ask you about your clientele. I know you have a few well-known clients. You've got Willie Robertson, Rascal Flats, who I love, Tim Tebow, Chip and Joanna Gaines. They seem to absolutely love your offerings.
Yes, I've gotten to have the pleasure of cooking for lots of different people in different types of arenas, whether they're in the music industry, they're actresses. Reese Witherspoon actually posted a picture of my cookies. She's friends with my cousin, and she had gifted
Nice.
her cookies, and it was so sweet. And just the way that, I think, again, like, food speaks to people. And I just love, no matter who they are, I love cooking for people and making them happy.
Yeah, I can tell that. I can tell that the celebrity luster um, does not cause you to operate any any different way than you would treat a normal person who just walks into your store or buys your cookie or buys your cookbook or any of those things. And I do want to talk about the cookbooks in just a moment, but we've got to take a very quick break and we'll be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with the OG MasterChef, the original MasterChef, Whitney Miller. Whitney, welcome back. I want to share with my audience about your cookbooks. You have Whitney Miller's New Southern Table and Modern Hospitality, Simple Recipes with Southern Charm. And the foreword was written by Gordon Ramsay. So that speaks really, really well of your relationship with him and the skills that he obviously recognizes in you. Talk to us about Whitney Miller's New Southern Table. Let's talk about that one first.
So this is a cookbook that I was able to share pretty much how I grew from MasterChef to I was able to travel to countries around the world and do cooking events, speaking events. And I felt like that was like my culinary school experience that I didn't have because I didn't go to culinary school. I learned from my great grandmother, my mom, you know, what I was learning in the kitchen myself. And so I took some recipes of dishes and put a Southern twist on them. So I have in there like a hot pot that I learned about in China. And I use ingredients like venison and sweet potatoes and Brussels sprouts. And so I put a little bit of a Southern twist, but also I feel like what it does is it makes some recipe or some dishes more approachable. So if you're nervous to try an Indian dish, I have a recipe that's like a Southern version of an Indian dish, like a butter
I
chicken.
love that.
I use ingredients that you know. So you're like, oh well, you know, I am nervous to use fish sauce or whatever. Well, try my version that doesn't use that, but it has these similar flavors. And I think the approachableness is something that really speaks to people too. So you can dive into one of my recipes and then you're comfortable with it and you like the flavors and you're like, well, you know what? Maybe next time I'll try, you know, maybe a more authentic version. But I definitely wanted to showcase how Southern ingredients like turnip greens and collard greens and things people might not work with, you know, and they're kind of considered a little bit lowly, and you can elevate them a little bit and put them into something you wouldn't normally think of.
Yeah, I love that. And, my mother could never get me to eat collard greens and turnip greens growing up. But now I have found ways to prepare them, and it usually involves vinegar that makes it so palatable. And obviously, I think as people grow, as people mature, their palate matures as well. So I'm actually really grateful for my mom's Southern cooking and just Southern cooking in general. And I have a feeling that when people try the recipes from this book, even though they are kind of an international Southern fusion, I don't know. I have a feeling people are going to want to stick with that and maybe not even bother with the, quote unquote, more authentic versions of the recipes. So kudos to you on that. Okay, let's talk about modern hospitality. Simple recipes with Southern charm. This sounds right up my alley too.
Yes, so this is a book that I put in there recipes that I grew up with. And then I would put a little bit of not so much, I would think, healthier in my mind, but just recipes that my grandmother would have used, and maybe a can was involved, and I use the fresh vegetable. And so I have in there a really good shrimp and grits recipe that is so amazing. There's biscuits, there's a granola that is absolutely phenomenal, but I put them into little like tart pans, and it makes like a really brunch presentation, and you can put yogurt in it. The dessert side of it, there's so many good things. There's a strawberry cream cupcake that is phenomenal. People just rave over. Yeah, the dessert section is something again I had fun with. So I would say that one is the highlight for that cookbook. And then in that new Southern Table, there's a brownie cookie recipe that you've got to try. It actually was spun the recipe for my brownie cookie that I have for Whitney's cookies today.
Oh, okay. So I actually was just talking to my niece. She was trying to make a brownie cookie the other day. She called it a brookie. Have you heard this?
Yes. So
Okay.
sometimes you can see it as like half of a chocolate chip cookie, half of a brownie put together. And so they'll kind of, sometimes call that a brookie. And then the brownie cookie is just you formulate it into a brownie shape, because typically you have to put it into a pan and it's going to, spread and shape up into like
Right.
whatever pan you put it in. But brownies are something, I mean, I still love today. I remember fighting my sister for making them because I wanted to lick the bowl thin, so brownies are something I absolutely love. So that's fitting that I was the very first cookie that I created for Whitney's Cookies.
I love it. And that actually is a perfect segue into something I wanted to ask you about because um, the last year or two for me personally, I have moved in a much more natural and concertedly non-toxic direction. My husband and I mean, I went through our house and I threw out hundreds of dollars worth of Bath and Body Works stuff. I threw out as much of the packaged and processed food as I could muster. There were a few items that I did leave behind, admittedly, but I'm human. I switched over to natural deodorant and toothpaste. And so I have really, really tried, especially with my cooking, to go at it from a more natural standpoint. So for me, going in your book and using a recipe to make cookies and being able to know that I'm buying organic flour and I'm using butter instead of what I know is in a lot of these packaged boxes, which is seed oils and stuff like that. How what are your views on this movement going, I mean, I guess the Make America Healthy Again movement, and incorporating that into your cooking? Is that something that you have really gotten on board with as well?
So personally, that is something that I have done, and I knew that I wanted to transition. And really, the last piece for my cookie company was going to be our sprinkles. But at home, yes, the products that I use, as far as like cleaning and bathing and everything, I've just since really I was married, which my husband and I just celebrated 10 years last year. And
Nice.
so I've just kind of always been on that end of it. My actual my background, I went into college to be a dietitian. So that food aspect of it, the more clean side of it, was like I had that side, then I had the cooking, baking side of it. So it's always been something that was I was very concerned about personal level. And so then the way that I cook for people, I'm mindful of that as well. And with my cookie company, the last piece, and it was this year that I was like, I'm going to make the change of my sprinkles, because I never used dyes, the artificial flavors. We always use the real ingredients. I mean, even up into our sugar. So we use a raw cane sugar. And the difference
Oh,
between raw
nice.
and granulated sugar is, first of all, you can see the difference. One is white because it's been processed, and the other is a beautiful, like cream kind of tan color. And then our crystals of the sugar are bigger, and it has a play into the cookies. But also, there's a smell, there's a taste difference. Like you can taste, like this is real. And so the vanilla that we use, like it is pure vanilla extract. You can look at the ingredients in um, other packaged things, other companies. There's a difference, and we use a lot of it. We do not skip on the good stuff. So
Awesome.
that is a super important thing to me. And this year we put out a campaign along with switching our sprinkles to dye free, and that is make cookies great again. Because we want people to know like what we are about. If you didn't know, if you don't take the time to look through the ingredient list for each of our cookies, that we are using good quality ingredients. They're real. Like you can see them, you can
Yeah.
pronounce them. That's the difference.
I love that. And I love that you're not using white sugar because that's been something, especially in baking. And I know in Southern recipes, if it's a dessert, it's got white sugar in it. And it's been quite a task for me to switch over to, I love using brown sugar. I love using, I've switched over to monk fruit for some things that doesn't require a lot of sugar because I do find with some of those sweeteners that I can tell a difference. But the brown granulated sugar, I think, is just the perfect replacement, and it's so much healthier for you. It's do you think that this movement is going to be more widespread a year from now, especially with RFK at NIH?
I think so. And I think I think people already are looking. I mean, the sprinkles aspect of it now on the my like company side of it, there's not a lot of options, and so I had to dig and I had to find the right ones. A lot of them are actually in Canada, so that that creates a challenge because then I have to worry about how long it's going to take and just all the different things. And so I hope more companies will get behind this. More companies will start having other options, for
Mhm.
ingredients for companies like us because they are very few and far between.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to take that extra step to make it where my cookies are something that if you're going to indulge, I want you to be able to I want it to be worth it. And you
Yeah.
can feel good about it. And it doesn't have to be junk. Like you don't have to pick up this and be like, I'm going to feel terrible after this,
Yeah.
well, whole cookie, but yeah, it's something that is super important to me, and I think people are going to taste the difference.
I
So
think so.
I will go to whitneyscookies.com, check out all of our cookies. Each month, I really love that I get to be creative in the kitchen. And so each month, I put out two specialty flavors. And this month is the Hello Dolly, which is a southern version of this 7-layer bar cookie that I grew up with. And I did a
Nice.
cookie version of it. And then a blueberry muffin cookie, which is so good. Jessica Simpson actually ordered this multiple occasions when I first came out with that flavor. She absolutely loved it. It's literally tastes just like a blueberry muffin.
Oh man. Oh gosh, that sounds amazing. And okay, and you said it's tell me the website again.
Whitney'sCookies.co.
Okay, and you ship nationwide, right?
Yes, we ship all over. We've shipped to Alaska, Hawaii. Like there's not a state in the US that we have not shipped to.
I love that. And just going back to what you were saying about suppliers in Canada, I know a lot of people's hair is on fire because they're like, "Oh my gosh, with this trade war, these tariffs, everything's going to be more expensive." But we just might find out in the near future that forced suppliers and manufacturers to be homegrown and to come back to the United States. So that might be an added extra sweet, pun intended, benefit of what's happening right now, and you might find that some of your suppliers are back here. I want to, and speaking of that, and you talked about the food coloring, which I think is something that a lot of people didn't realize just how bad it can be. And last year, Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin held a roundtable on health, and there were a number. The Food Babe was there, Casey and Callie Means. There were a number of people in the food industry who were there, and they were talking about how trying to remember if it was Fruit Loops or Fruity Pebbles, one of those cereals, and they were talking about the dyes. In Canada they use carrots and beets and things like that as food coloring, and here in the United States, it's all of the toxic red, yellow, and blue food colorings. What do you use? Do you go with like the vegetable route where you use the beets and the carrots and things like that?
Yeah, so the sprinkles that we use, they do the fruit and vegetable alternative
Nice.
coloring. And the other day, I actually made my own just to test out for purposes for a specialty cookie. I don't want to give my secret, but it was a
Sure.
vegetable. It was mind blowing. I was like, I just made a homemade food coloring. Like this is crazy. And so again, I go that extra mile. But it really wasn't complicated, and it was like I told my kids the other day, I said, okay, the difference is look at a vegetable, and if a food that you're wanting to eat doesn't look like the color of this vegetable or fruit, steer clear. Like
Yes.
if it is
Yes.
like blue, there's nothing natural that it was made from.
It's so funny you say that because years ago, before I even cared, I cared less than zero about food toxicity. And I was just ignorant at the time. But when you're in your 20s, you think you're going to live forever, and you think that that stuff doesn't matter because you think that there will be a magic pill developed at some point whenever you start dealing with the repercussions of eating the garbage. And I remember I had an ice cream one time. There's a brand in California called Thrifty, and they have a cotton candy ice cream that's like neon blue and neon pink. And even then, before I cared two hoots about anything toxic, food coloring, anything like that. I remember thinking to myself, this is definitely not natural and probably not good for me because it looked radioactive. The colors were that vivid.
And I hope too, like we start teaching this, like my kids' age, what what is our food, like what is our food made from? Like when my kids say blue raspberry, I'm like, there is not a blue raspberry. Like that is a fake thing. And
Yeah.
they think that's real. And I'm like, you cannot
Yeah.
find a blue raspberry. Like I want them to know. And I think this movement will for sure, I think, start teaching some adults that don't know, and then hopefully that'll trickle down to their kids. And then like we really will see a big push and
Yeah.
hopefully make everyone a little bit healthier.
And make cookies great again. And everybody go to whitneyscookies.co. I'm going to go on there and I'm going to place an order for the whole office. So my office is going to benefit from your tastings as well. So Whitney, thank you so much for being here. Love, love, love what you are doing. And we'll speak soon.
Thank you so much. Enjoy.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. All right, I hate to go from sweet to sour, but alas, here we are. So with respect to sour, well, the sweet part, obviously, you already got from Whitney. And everybody, go check out her website, whitneyscookies.co. Like I said, I intend to go on there and buy at least a couple dozen cookies so that I can have them here in the newsroom for all of the great people here at Just the News. But at any rate, let's transition from sweet to sour. And by sour, I mean the Kennedy Center. Now, for those of you who have been to Washington, D.C., maybe you have had the pleasure of seeing a show at the Kennedy Center. It is one of our nation's premier performing arts centers. And the issue with the Kennedy Center is that art in general is intended to push the bounds, push the Overton window if we're talking about politics, but just kind of, push the boundaries in culture. And obviously here in the United States, we look at American culture and American values and how we can kind of start conversations exploring new ideas, and that is perfectly fine. Unfortunately, for institutions and organizations and performing arts centers like the Kennedy Center, they only push the bounds in one direction. I'm pretty sure that in the last 5 or 10 years, they have never hosted a Ben Shapiro, who seems to be the premier conservative to kick out. There are plenty of more people out there who are more conservative who, anyway. At any rate, the Kennedy Center is a wonderful venue. They bring all sorts of shows and talents to their stage. But President Trump decided that in the interest of the Kennedy Center's performing arts repertoire and the fact that oftentimes it caters to children with children's ballets and types of productions that cater to people who are younger than 18 and sometimes really young youngsters, that maybe we shouldn't allow these trans shows to go on there. So this past weekend, there were hundreds of trans protesters surrounding or outside the Kennedy Center, and they called it a rally and march for drag. Very creative, right? Not at all on the nose. And it so this was their latest in a series of protests in response to President Trump's ban on drag productions. Many of them, of course, were aimed at under 18, which is inappropriate. You should not be talking to kids about sex of any kind, gay, straight, whatever. Anyhow, so one of the organizers said this president is demonizing a marginalized community in order to control the arts in America. It's shameful, immoral, and weak. This was drag artist Tara Hoot. And he, she, whatever, said, at a time when our artists and LGBTQ plus communities are under attack more than ever, we need to show up and speak up against this fascist takeover of the arts. So just a little bit of background. The Kennedy Center, their annual funding from the federal government has gone up, is as much as $50 million in recent years. Of course, they also receive private endowments or private donations. So they're rolling in dough. They're doing just fine. Just last year, the Kennedy Center featured drag shows specifically targeted at our youth. This will stop, President Trump wrote in a Truth Social post. The Kennedy Center is an American jewel and must reflect the brightest stars on its stage from all across our nation. For the Kennedy Center, the best is yet to come. And of course, a whole slew of celebrities out there were pulling their hair out and screaming and crying and so upset, and they have pulled their performances from the Performing Arts Center, or they have resigned from the Kennedy Center's board, including Grey's Anatomy producer Shonda Rhimes, actress Issa Rae, and the musical Hamilton. Oh, well, listen, I'm probably going to get some hate with this, but I care literally zero about the musical Hamilton. It's not a musical. Rapping doesn't count. And I'm sorry. Anyway. And yes, I am a purist. I am a traditionalist when it comes to musicals, and that might make me a bit of a snub, but I am. And I have never seen Hamilton. I never even watched the free version on Disney Plus, and I don't ever intend to. And from what I understand, there are also a ton of inaccuracies, which I understand, artistic expression and the need to, overemphasize certain things for artistic value and expression, but don't take something like Alexander Hamilton or our founding fathers or the founding of our country and just go absolutely whack with it, which from what I understand, again, not having seen it, so just understand that I'm coming from that standpoint. But from what I understand, they really, really play it fast and loose with American history. And so I take personal offense to that. Anyway, all right, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back on Monday with our regular audio podcast, as we are every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Remember to find me on social media at Amanda Head, ubiquitously everywhere. Why, whenever I say that, can I not get the word out? I put it in stories all the time. I say it on the TV show. And yet when I say it here on this podcast, I ubiquitously on social media at Amanda Head. And then the podcast has its very own page on X at Furthermore Pod. So go find me and follow me. And remember, this podcast, of course, comes out on Rumble and YouTube. And you know that because you're watching it on Rumble or YouTube. But we post those announcements across social media. So follow me over there. And then the audio podcast, of course, available on all of the major podcasting platforms. So go out there and find it and like it and rate it and review it. And I would be forever grateful. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your weekend. See you on Monday.